A young woman was running desperately along a rural road in New Mexico, naked except for a dog collar around her neck. A 6-foot metal chain dangled from her neck. Her hands were deeply wounded, and her feet were covered in blood. Passing cars ignored her, but fortunately, she spotted a mobile home and managed to run inside. The startled homeowner immediately called the police. When officers arrived, they found a terrified woman in tears, dragging a metal chain behind her. Her name was Cynthia Vigil, 21 years old. Cynthia stated she had been kidnapped in Albuquerque and held captive for 3 days. She described being chained in a space with only a bed and a bucket for a toilet, where she endured constant sexual torture. The perpetrator she identified was David Parker Ray, a 59-year-old mechanic. Based on her statement, police headed to David's residence, where they discovered a scene of unimaginable horror. As soon as they opened the trailer next to his house, they sensed this was no ordinary living space. In the center of the trailer sat a black gynecological-style examination chair, rigged with pulleys, ropes, and handcuffs. The walls were lined with neatly organized torture devices, many of which were modified common tools, some with nails melted and bent into plastic. David called this soundproof torture chamber, worth about $100,000, his toy box. Even more disturbing was a checklist titled, "How to Handle Victims," posted on the wall, detailing specific methods for dealing with kidnapped women. Investigators also discovered a diary with names and dates of women who appeared to be victims. Perhaps most chilling were the audio tapes found at the scene. These introductory messages, recorded in David's monotone voice, described in detail the torture and violence that would be inflicted on victims. Experts analyzed that these tapes were systematically created to break down victims psychologically and maximize their terror. "You're now my toy. I'll tell you how to survive here. You'll experience each of the devices I've prepared, but you'd better not scream or resist. Your life is entirely in my hands." Police immediately arrested David and his girlfriend, Cindy Hendy. David denied all charges, claiming these were simply consensual sexual fantasy activities. Regarding Cynthia specifically, he used her drug addiction as an excuse, claiming he was merely trying to help her overcome her addiction. However, Cindy soon began to talk during police interrogation, admitting to the existence of other victims. As the investigation progressed, shocking facts emerged one after another. David's diary contained a list of at least 50 victims. Investigators immediately began cross-referencing missing persons lists and surprisingly found connections with women who had disappeared across several states, including New Mexico, California, Texas, and Arizona. It was confirmed that many women had gone missing around New Mexico's largest artificial reservoir, Elephant Butte Lake. Investigators focused on a hand-drawn treasure map found in David's trailer. The map had several X marks, which were presumed to be body disposal sites. The investigation team immediately excavated all the marked locations, but surprisingly, not a single body was found. Even more shocking was the fact that David's family and acquaintances actively participated in these grotesque and brutal crimes. His girlfriend, Cindy, participated directly in imprisoning and torturing victims, stating during police investigation, "I've seen more than 14 victims," and providing names and details of some victims. David's own daughter, Jessie Ray, actively participated in her father's crimes. She primarily scouted women in bars to bring to her father. Jessie's friend Roy Yancey confessed to killing a woman under David's orders, but nothing was found at the burial site he indicated. As David's criminal activities came to light, brave testimonies from survivors who escaped his clutches began to emerge. To date, 3 surviving victims have been confirmed, each kidnapped in different ways but all subjected to similar torture. The first survivor was Cynthia, who triggered the entire investigation. She was 21 years old at the time and working as a sex worker in Albuquerque. On March 20th, 1999, David approached her with a forged police badge, claiming he was arresting her, then handcuffed her and transported her to the toy box. She was drugged and imprisoned for 3 days, forced to listen to David's recorded welcome message tape. She was tied to the gynecological examination table and subjected to sexual abuse and torture beyond imagination. Cynthia's escape was almost miraculous. On March 22nd, she seized a moment when Cindy was distracted, striking her on the head with a nearby lamp, then finding keys to unlock her chains and escape from the trailer. Running through the desert naked, she entered a home and called the police, playing a crucial role in the arrest of David and Cindy. The second survivor was Angelica Montoya, an 18-year-old girl. She was a runaway who was lured and kidnapped by Jesse Ray at a bar. She was drugged, handcuffed, and imprisoned for a week in a drugged state, brainwashed by listening to recorded messages, and continuously subjected to abuse and sexual violence using torture devices. After 7 days, confirming that the drug effects had erased her memory, David released her. Although her memories were dim, years later, Angelica saw Cynthia's case on the news, recovered her memories, reported to police, and testified in court. The third and final survivor was Kelly Vance, 22 years old. While traveling with her boyfriend, they were attacked by David. Her boyfriend was knocked unconscious, and Kelly was kidnapped by David. Like the others, she was tied to the examination table and tortured, repeatedly drugged until her mind was foggy. And when she lost all memory due to trauma, David decided the brainwashing was complete and released her. However, after Cynthia's case was reported in the news, Kelly's memories partially returned during trauma therapy, and she cooperated with police and testified in court. These women's courageous testimonies played a crucial role in proving David's guilt. Notably, the testimonies of these 3 women showed remarkable consistency, accurately describing David's pattern of crimes, the interior structure of the toy box, and his torture methods. This was evidence that David committed crimes in the same way with all victims. However, the first trial hit an unexpected obstacle. Although surviving victims, including Cynthia, took the stand, most had dim memories overall due to the drugs. Also, without the decisive evidence of bodies, they failed to fully convince the jury, and the first trial ended in a mistrial. But in the second trial, prosecutors revealed the recorded tapes that David played for his victims. Through this eerie evidence, jurors could directly confirm David's cruelty and the calculated nature of his crimes. In 2001, David was sentenced to 224 years. However, David died of a heart attack just 8 months after sentencing. His sudden death left many questions unresolved, and the victims' bodies were never found. His accomplices met different fates. His wife Cindy was sentenced to 36 years, but was paroled in 2019 after serving 20 years. Jesse Ray received probation due to lack of direct evidence of involvement and her cooperative attitude. Roy Yancey was sentenced to 22 years after being found guilty of direct murder charges. Currently, experts estimate that over 90 disappearances may be connected to him. This concludes the horrifying story of the insane serial killer David Parker Ray's terrible crimes.